grand manipulation has been happening ever since the late 70s or early 1980s. And it's manifested itself in a very different way today. We see it in front of us all the time, but it's not necessarily as visible as it used to be. And I lay the blame squarely on upper education, like the Harvard universities of this world, who made a significant shift in management theory. They shifted from capability building to slightly manipulation-related management practices, and then eventually becoming big promoters of it, maybe not directly in their curriculum, but has become a big part of a lot of the thought leadership and the books that they actually cover that make them a lot of money. So what do I mean by the grand manipulation? Okay, so we'll put this into a very simple equation, and at the same time, we shouldn't be naive. In the world of business, there is always manipulation. It always has been there and always will be there, and it'll never go away. But having a balance, okay, so it's almost like a 90-10 balance. What do I mean by that? 10% manipulation, 90% capability. But what happens, and what started from the late 70s and early 80s, is the flip side. It started shifting from 10% manipulation all the way to where we are today, to 90% manipulation and 10% capability. And this grand manipulation has been disguised like things like, for example, negotiation skills, influence skills, persuasion skills. And don't get me wrong, these things are super important, and they've made obviously a lot of money for a lot of people, and they serve a super important purpose. But the grand manipulation that I'm talking about is when that supersedes capability. And that's where we are today, and it's a very dangerous conjunction. If you were listening to one of my earlier talks, and I've discussed this in some of my articles, I call it the talent explosion. We're reaching a time in history, roughly 1.5 to 2 years from now, where there's going to be a rise of different type of talent. And this talent is going to be equipped with what I call super skills of the future. And super skills of the future, one of the examples you can go ahead and Google is called the T-shaped skill set. And it uses a cross-section of skills that build a certain amount of talent. I don't know if that's the right way necessarily to put it, but it builds a skill set that is basically crosses over several different areas of capabilities. And the future is largely like that. And people in the entrepreneurial space, or if you're in the consulting space, these are things that are actually very normal to where you stand right now. And it's about kind of fine-tuning and further developing those type of capabilities. But what's going to happen is you're going to see so let me just step back a bit. So entrepreneurship and consulting, although we hear about a lot and we see it all around us, if you look at it, it's not like in mass majority of implementation. And I know it sounds very strange to say that, and I'm going to try my best to explain this in the best way possible. Basically, what it comes down to is the type of talent that would be used to solve some of the world's biggest problems is going to shift. Okay, so a lot of people in different positions, there would be policy-making positions, even startup companies that have started up recently or been around for a while and still building up. The skill set that has built the talent base of that organization may not be equipped to solve some of the really challenging problems that are about to come at the end of the pandemic. And so that's where this gets really exciting, that, the talent explosion and, the different cross sets of skill sets that are going to be needed to solve some of the world's biggest problems. And that's where we're going to start to see a shift in the grand manipulation, right? The grand manipulation is where, again, it's like 90% manipulation, 10% capability, and it's going to shift the other way around, going back to where it was originally, 90% capability and 10% manipulation. Manipulation will always be there, by the way, just to reiterate that point. It's a matter of it being used in a constructive manner rather than in a destructive manner. And that's ultimately what happens when you make knowledge available to people at all levels, which is the way knowledge should be. And that's the way it is working. And you start putting manipulation tools in the hands of the wrong people, and it works, and it starts to work very well for them, and it continues to grow, you get a problem, right? And that's where we are today, right? This is where we get this, fakeness in social media. We get businesses that are just ghost businesses. I mean, that's how I classify them, but, there's just a lot of vapeware, I think was like the 90s term to that, where it's just, they, keep saying we've got all these capabilities and we got these contracts and we got these things we do, but they really don't have it at all. Or it may be highly exaggerated, which is obviously a kind of a 101 manipulation tactic. And again, I mean, anybody listening to us who's in business, I mean, obviously, we're not naive. We understand that that is part of the game. But the question is, like, how much of that game? And that's where I think that this grand manipulation is going to take a turn with this talent explosion that will happen in roughly a year and a half, 2 years from now. So long story short, stepping kind of to the side and conclusion of this is I get asked about, what is like the number one super skill of the future we need to learn. And those who know me very well, my focal area has been in growth hacking. It is definitely one of the big super skills of the future. But the underlying real super skill that everybody needs to develop is learning. And we've heard this before, right? Lifelong learning and continuous learning. It's all kind of got all kinds of names, but ultimately is being able to learn and learn faster and learn even in better quality gives you an ability to acquire new skill sets. And you're going to need new skill sets. You're going to need them in different ways. And when I say skill sets, we look at skill sets in a vertical and horizontal manner, right? Vertical becoming specialized, horizontal being cross-functional. And the future is really about working both of them. You're going to have to work cross-functionally, and you're going to have to work vertically. So you're going to have to get really good at things that you may not necessarily have touched on before. And that may contradict some of the things that you've been working on in the past. And one of the popular ones, even I've done it, is Strength Finder 2.0. It's an amazing tool. But the premises of it is like, okay, here's what you're really strong at, and come from that position and use what you're strong at and just kind of leave the rest to be. And I know I'm probably over summarizing that, but the point, though, is that you need to take those strengths and be using them to develop new skills, right? I mean, you're going to learn differently than I or others do, and how you go about that is going to be, essentially the blueprint that you use to learn. But the great point here is that you need to be able to take it and turn into those super skills. You're going to go about it differently and develop them in different ways. And that is essentially the grand manipulation.